Hey everybody, well, within a year, 2 years, the Pac-12 will be down to just 5 universities after one very shocking day that occurred yesterday. Yeah. And you have to wonder, first of all, how did we get into this mess? And I have to say, as a person who watched George Kilavkoff's rise, the Pac-10 commissioner rise, from when I met him when he was vice president with Major League Baseball Advanced Media in 2003, we met at the Super Bowl in San Diego in the lobby of the Marriott there prior to the game. His rise consisted of stints on a number of boards, a startup where he wasn't actually the founder or CEO of the startup, and then engagements where he was a digital media specialist, even though his degree is in law, and he has no track record of having built a program that would indicate any true digital expertise, except from the legal perspective. I don't mean to denigrate George at all. I happen to like the person that I met. This is not personal, but this is business. The Pac-12 conference is in trouble. And George, who came in from being executive vice president with MGM Gaming, finds himself in a shocking place that can have only occurred by his being sandbagged. First, by representatives of UCLA and USC who engineered a way to get out and head over to the Big-10. And now, by pretty much every other school except Cal and Stanford and Washington State and Oregon State, that elected to bolt, to move, to go someplace, to go to the Pac-12, to Big-12, or to the Big-10. Why? You would say, why is this happening? Money. Universities are trying to increase their media rights fees in an era where inflation is really impacted the bottom line of athletic departments. And the federal government does not want to do anything about inflation in terms of price controls. Instead, they hike up the interest rates, which gives us more inflation. But I digress. This has really exacerbated the need for higher media rights payments from media organizations like ABC, for example, Disney ABC, to the conferences. And so it's thought that, hey, if you have more teams in a conference, you can command a higher rights fee. But there's a problem. It's called the Sherman Antitrust Act. And you can't be seen to form a new super conference that essentially, if you take it to its logical conclusion of eating other teams, right, will grow to where there's one single super conference or two, because it's called collusion. And it's anti-competitive, the result. Anti-competitive because there's no other place for a media rights organization to go to in terms of, hey, what's the price for a rights fee if I have one organization charging it, in this case the Big-12 or the Big-10, as opposed to multiple organizations with rights fees that represent their offerings in a regional level. A system that really helps the universities and colleges. Why? Because they're regional. In other words, your son or daughter doesn't have to travel a long distance if, say, they play a rival university like Cal playing UCLA because it's just down the block, essentially in California. But if UCLA and your daughter's at UCLA is suddenly now in the Big-10, it means that your daughter is going to travel a longer distance to play her game. That's more cost incurred by the university. And frankly speaking, arguably a more dangerous situation for her, because chances are she may be in an area, because she's not, she's more likely from the West Coast, that's not safe if something happens. This may not seem like much, but believe me, when you're recruiting, every little tidbit is a fair game weapon. But I digress. I can go on and on and on about the inefficiencies of this setup, but I can also go further on to explain how this looks like an antitrust violation in how it came out. The Pac-12 commissioner and the athletic directors that remain expected a new deal to be on the table, paced by a new media offering by Apple, which I believe lasts for 1 year, and it's adjustable. And even though it started off with less money than they wanted, it was supposed to ratchet up to more. Well, that's not a good start. You want to come out and say, we're going to give you more money out of this deal than you had before. Not, well, you're going to take a loss. That's the first mistake. But the university's so hungry for money, and rightly so, that they simply bolted when George and company thought they had a deal. That simply tells you and me that there was a side conversation going on. And if you say, yeah, you're right, there was a side conversation going on, folks, that's collusion. Because the question is, a side conversation with who? It could only have been with representatives from, depending on the university, the Big-12 or the Big-10. So the question here is, what is George going to do? George should file an injunction right now. He should not waste any time on this matter. He and the Pac-12 representatives and his predecessor have been nice, but they all have one thing in common. They are too much of a club behavior and not of a predator behavior. This is a dog-eat-dog situation. And the dogs have eaten the Pac-12 all but alive. The question is, does George Kilavkoff have enough dog in him to fight back? We'll see. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnowblog.com. But if I had his job, I'd have an injunction lawsuit out the door, and so fast it would hit them right upside their collective heads. That's how you fight. That's how you play the game. At least that's how I play the game.